Thank you very much. May we please settle down? And may I ask those who are sitting at the back to please join us here in front. Thank you once again. Once more, my name is Marva Scott. I will be facilitating this session today, and we are very grateful that you have joined us. The Director General will do an official welcome, so I'm not going to do that now. I just want to make a few announcements, few exciting announcements. The first one is that we have Wi-Fi, and it's free. So you just go to the CSIR and just log in. I'm sure that's exciting. The second one is that we have a Twitter handle if you want to reflect some views on the Indaba, and if you want to share that with colleagues all over the country, all over the world. It's #YouthInnovate. Please do that. As a start, because we're starting a little bit late, I didn't like to waste time. We've got a panel in front of us. My colleague, David Maimela, will be facilitating the discussion, and I would like to call him to come and introduce the panel and start the discussion up front. As you can see on your program in front of you, immediately after the panel discussion, we will engage. After that, we will then have an official welcome by the Director General. Mr. Maimela.
Good morning to everybody. As Mr. Mavascott has already indicated, my name is David Maimela. I'm going to be co-facilitator, co-program director for this morning until the end of the Indaba at the end of today. Would like to extend a hearty word of welcome to all of you from wherever you come from to this, the first, or if you like, inaugural Youth Indaba on science, technology and innovation in South Africa. I think we must extend a word of appreciation to the department, the ministry and the Minister of Science and Technology, Minister Naledi Pandor, for having the foresight to actually convene this forum today. Let's also welcome and acknowledge the Director General, Dr. Philip Jwacha, who is the DG of Science and Technology, and other senior officials that are accompanying the Minister. Let us also acknowledge, if at all I've not seen anyone yet, if at all there are other heads and representatives of the institutions that constitute our national innovation system. I know that we are expecting people from institutions like the Human Sciences Research Council and as well as the place where we actually are. So welcome to all of you, and a special word of welcome to the panel. I promise I will be a very good steward. And I think we have negotiated the terms of engagement already. So I don't have to act like a policeman. Just to kick off by indicating just a few things. The first one being that we need to underscore the objectives of this Indaba. Very historic, very inaugural, and therefore all your inputs and deliberations are going to be very important because they will be charting new territory in terms of where the youth and innovation should go in South Africa. There are basically 4 objectives why we are convened here today by the Department of Science and Technology. The first one being to answer the very simple and basic question. What needs to be done to enhance the effective inclusion of youth across the science, technology, and innovation sector and the value chain? What can we do to effectively make sure that there is youth inclusion in our STI value chain? The second one being that how can the power of STI, science, technology, and innovation, and dare I add, both the power of STI and the energy of the youth be used to actually be combined to actually enhance and empower the youth and make sure that they have the necessary platforms to engage in development and make sure that they make positive impact in the value chains. The third one being that what could be the practical suggestions that you could make in this Indaba on how to strengthen STI support systems and render them more responsive and accessible to the youth, in line, of course, with the national youth policy. Of course, the last one is to make sure that we provide a platform to make sure that at the end of today, we've got a Youth Indaba declaration on STI that actually charts a way forward in terms of particular commitments and particular tasks that, you know, all of us collectively have to undertake going forward. So those are the objectives of why we are here today. Just by way of teasing the first session and the first panel, my own understanding of science and technology and innovation is the fact that at the center of it is the process of continuous learning and continuous imagination. That without these two elements, no society can claim a stake in the process of science and technology as well as innovation. You know, just in 1947, when India obtained its independence, the first Prime Minister Nehru, wrote a book, The Discovery of India, and in that book he actually spoke about a very important concept which still resonates in the Indian society even today. The concept referred to as the scientific temper. Basically to say, once in a post-colonial society, independent India, how do you make sure that society moves away from superstition and drives towards science, innovation, and critical thinking? And that becomes the foundation of many other things, including development, progress, production, etc., etc. And so we need to, although we know that the tension of the coexistence of both superstition and science continues in society and everywhere else in the world, but the desire to create and instill the scientific temper amongst young people in particular becomes very critical. That science is not something that is up there in the sky, obscure, invisible, and so on. Science is our everyday thing. Science, maths, it's what we do every day. It's what we live. It's what we experience. It's what we do. So it's a lifestyle. And so, I mean, for many young people, they would think that perhaps science and technology and innovation is out of reach for them. But if you look at some of the shining examples across the world, and even in our shores here, I can mention just a few of them. The list is very long. I mean, Isaac Newton made the discoveries that he made in science at the age of 23. Karl Marx, by the age of 30, had written many books, including the Communist Manifesto. Che Guevara and Fidel Castro marched into Havana, and they were in their late 20s when they took over power. Charlotte Maxeke obtained a science degree in the United States at the age of 39. Kenneth Makate, I think most of you would know the controversy around the innovation around Please Call Me, is a young person, as all of us know. And this is the challenge. And it should not discourage you that even as you innovate, the big players in the space are likely to usurp the opportunity and they are likely to contest. But that should not discourage you from thinking, from innovating. Lihlogonolo Phadi got his PhD in maths at the Northwest University at the age of 28. John Langalbalele Dube established the Institute of Ohlange at the age of 30. And the list is endless, as I'm saying. So I think that we need to say that this thing of science, technology, mathematics, and innovation is the issue of the youth. It's the issue of young people. And so it's not out there or high up there. It's just amongst you, and you must just carry that scientific temper that Prime Minister Nehru spoke about. Let me introduce the panel. The panel is, as in the program, Youth in Science, Technology and Innovation, Entrepreneurship. So we're looking at innovation and entrepreneurship and the role of young people, what they are actually doing and the potential that they have on the things that they are supposed to be doing. The first, I don't know if I've got the correct notes here. Our first panelist will be Bridget Evans. She is the director of the SAB Foundation. I think most of you as young people know what is SAB. I'm not implying anything, by the way. She is on my left there, second from my left. The second one is Sandiswa Kai. She's the managing director, managing director of AET Africa. She'll tell us a little bit about that. The third one is the president of the South African Youth Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Tapelo Maleke. I think the name says it all. And then the last one is the president of the South African Youth Council, Mr. Tulane Chefuta. So I'm going to, without further ado, welcome Bridget Evans to open the panel and have her 10 minutes, and then the second speaker will come forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm quite short. Can everyone hear me? So we were asked to just give a brief overview of what we are doing in innovation, and then to talk about some of the things we think are working well and some of the things that we believe are challenges in the youth and innovation space. So the SAB Foundation, I'm going to race through this, but really it's an ownership transaction under Black Economic Empowerment. It's a foundation set up by South African breweries. It has an endowment, and we invest, as of this year, just under 90 million rand a year into three different areas, which is we've got a program that invests directly into youth businesses. Sorry, not just youth businesses. I have to say our key beneficiary groups are women, youth, people in rural areas, and people with disabilities. So we have one program that focuses on entrepreneurship. We have another one where we're really trying to reach very rural areas, and we're doing that through smallholder farming and some other initiatives where we are taking products out to the last mile. And a lot of those are innovation products such as solar technology, clean burning stoves, and a lot of the products actually come through our innovation awards and struggle to reach very rural markets. The third area is we have the social innovation awards, and that is the area that I'll focus on this morning. So we've invested in, this is just some stats on the entrepreneurs and innovation that we've invested in so far. We have scaled up a lot this year, so we anticipate investing in a lot more people annually. Probably we'll be looking at 100 people per annum. And we've invested in 103 social innovations so far. The Social Innovation Awards, just also to say that we monitor everything very closely. We have a tracking system, so we know how many jobs have been created, how much turnover has increased, and in terms of social innovation, very importantly, what is the social impact of the innovations. So because we focus on social innovation specifically, social innovation for us it's innovation that has a business model, but that can also solve a social problem. So we do look at it with a particular lens. So we're not looking at innovation in general. It really must try and solve a social problem. It's done through an award, and then also we invest in. We give them technical support, and we're very fortunate that we have a partnership with a technology innovation agency who've really been, it's a partnership that started this year, and it's really been remarkable. We had some wonderful feedback just last week from an organization that's making a special new type of positioner for severely disabled children, and they've got an amazing assistance from the tech station in the Western Cape. And then also we work with the Innovation Hub, which provides mentoring for each of the Social Innovation Award winners. We normally, so this year we're actually just busy going through our Social Innovation Award entries, and we got 600. Most of those entries are from youth, and we're busy going through them at the moment to get our final 20. So it's very top of mind for me right now, the types of innovation that we are looking at. These are just some examples to show you what we invest. This was last year's winners, so you can see there we have a robotics, a toy somebody has designed that is for schools, disadvantaged schools, to be able to start learning things around engineering, robotics, which, as all of you know, is the future. We also have somebody who's developed a mosquito repellent that actually is infused in plastic polymers that is spun into yarn and is used to make socks, which is really interesting because the majority of malaria bites happen at dusk, and the major treatment for malaria, or prevention for malaria in Africa, is bed nets, which people only climb under when they go to sleep. So there's a huge window where they can get bitten. And so the majority of bites happen on the ankles. So there's just another interesting example. I'm not going to go through all of them. These are just breast cancer. It's just to show you that it's quite varied. Rural health treatments, breast cancer therapeutics, water security, mobile science labs, innovation around water usage in toilets and the use of waste from toilets, prosthetics for children manufactured in South Africa as opposed to overseas. So these are just, I'm just going to go through these. Vula Eye Health is an app which helps people in rural clinics to diagnose eye conditions quickly, connects them to urban ophthalmologists in government hospitals so they can get immediate diagnosis and prevent blindness, or also prevent unnecessary queuing to see specialists if it's not necessary. I'm not going to go through any more because I know my time's limited, but just to say, what's working. I think the thing for me is we see no shortage of innovation in the science and technology fields and other fields, both developed by youth and for youth. some of the examples, maths games, science kits, affordable robotics, engineering education for schools, apps in general, and we have a partnership with tech stations that helps us to develop a lot of this kind of innovation. I think one of the challenges that I really want to speak to is particularly around apps. So you have these amazing apps that people are developing across the country, but a lot of them, it's very, very difficult to find a business model, and for those apps to become self-sustainable. So what you've got, let me just give you one example, is an app that was designed specifically to prevent what happened at universities a few years ago when people stormed the university at the last minute to try and get in. Of course, there was a tragedy there. And there are so many apps which are trying to help kids from disadvantaged schools to be able to learn more about career choices, to understand what marks they need, to get into different qualifications, to be able to access application forms from institutions across the country, which normally they would write to an institution and then get the forms, and often they just don't know what institutions are out there and what options are out there, so it's trying to level the playing field. Now, in terms of youth and creating access to these things, this is an amazing technology. We've seen at least 6 apps that are all doing the same thing, and all of them are hoping that through high volumes of usage of that app, they will create advertising and they will earn an income through advertising. The challenge is that they're all working on very small budgets, and for them to reach that level of scale is a huge challenge, and also to have people to have people find out about those apps. If you're from a rural area, how are you going to find out about this app? I think there is a lot of opportunity to combine these kinds of different things, to have and sort of more national and more formalized support structures through like career apps, through connecting unemployed people to jobs, through there's a huge range of different apps. So the challenges that I see as well in a lot of innovation is that the runways to profitability are long, and there's just not enough funding available at the early stages, both startup and seed funding. Often, if you've got innovation that's particularly targeting your sort of low-income households, which because we work with social innovation, we see a lot of that. So, for example, I'm just going to use a solar light again, but what tends to happen is there's a lot of cost in developing that innovation, and then once you reach the market with that innovation, your margins are going to be very small. So it's very difficult for that person to take a huge loan to then have to pay it back, or so we see a lot of challenges around that. And what ends up happening then is that you get a lot of innovators, both in the social innovation space and other innovators, that end up hopping from one competition to the next. And they spend more time entering competitions than actually focus on growing the business, because it's the only way for them to raise funding. And of course, it's a distraction, obviously it's important, and I understand why people have to do it. But you end up seeing 3 years down the line, they've raised 100,000 Rand here, 50,000 Rand here, whatever, and they spend their life entering competitions, and they haven't made a lot of progress on the innovation. Effective mentoring and appropriate technical skills, given that innovation is so varied, I think that's a challenge. I would love to see a national database of technical mentors that we could tap into on very, very specific types of innovation, where we can try and draw that experience in. And many of the products in our space are too expensive, and this is a big one in this setting, is a lot of them are too expensive for individuals, and they're really heavily dependent. When I see their business models, and I'm busy going through a whole lot of business models at the moment, their hope is always, probably 40% of the innovations we get, the hope is that somewhere in government, people will find their product useful and they will buy it on behalf of other people. And I just think it's a very risky it is a risky strategy. So a lot of them, for example, the robotics toy hopes that the Department of Education will buy those toys for schools. And there is a lot of that hope that rests in business models, or they're hoping that through corporate social investment funding, philanthropic individuals will buy this on behalf of other people. And so for me, the business models themselves often need some work. As I say here, they rely solely on government. So just lastly, our solutions. I think we got frustrated with this challenge of here we are making awards, and our awards go from 150,000 Rand to 1.2 million. And I think we just feel like there's so much potential in the innovation that we invest in, and we're not really helping a lot of them by giving them 100,000 Rand. Yes, we get them out of the starting blocks a little bit, but it's not going to help them with that long runway or try and get them to the point of commercialization. So we've introduced a second round fund. When I say introduced, we're just launching it now, which will allow innovation winners from the past who've made progress, who demonstrate commitment and commercial viability potential, can come back and we will reinvest in them. And part of that process is for us to take them through that, I would say, the funding chasm, and to get them to the point where other investors will be interested. And our big focus as well is on partnerships, because obviously none of these things can happen in isolation, and we hope that through partnerships with many people working in innovation, and by working more closely together and collaborating more, we will be able to actually create a proper way of closing this gap around funding, where we can take our pipeline and introduce it to the IDC Social Enterprise Fund or whoever, so that these guys have a way of getting from those early stages up to the point where they are a commercial operation. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Ms. Sandiswa Kai, the Managing Director of AET Africa.
Good morning, everyone. All protocol observed. I appreciate being here as an entrepreneur, as well as a social scientist and the youth in the current South Africa. When I got this call to be here, I was going through my head in terms of how much I want to share. But one of the things that I would like to introduce is AET Africa, and the products and the journey and our experience to date. As introduced, AET Africa is a company that's based in East London at the Science and Technology Park. We are a startup company. We do research, we design, we manufacture energy efficiency products and green products. We develop our own products. We are grassroots innovators. Anyone who knows the Eastern Cape, it's predominantly rural. And I'm also coming from the rural Eastern Cape. And as I said, I'm a social scientist. So I didn't study like your natural science and other stuff. But in terms of our concept, what we do, we look, as a social scientist myself, the products that we've developed came out of our own experiences. For example, the hotspot, which is one of the products that I normally sell and participate in these programs with. It's a device that we developed with my partner who is technical, because I was switching my geyser on and off. I mean, I realized within my community, I was staying in Stadaram back then, and then from my friends, from everywhere I went, I realized people are switching their geyser on and off because it was very difficult to afford to keep your geyser on. There's the energy consumption part of it, but the price of electricity was like really hitting everyone. So I looked into this and I'm like, what can we do in order to change the status quo? How do we tap into the challenges that we also experience on a daily basis? I think the speaker already said that science, it's our everyday life. So I wanted to turn my experience into coming with a solution that can touch someone else's life. So that's how the hotspot concept came about. But AET as a company, we started the journey in terms of research and development since 2014 with another device we call a heat radar, which is targeting the commercial setup. The hotspot is targeting the residential market, and then we partner on other products that are targeting the industrial market. So since 2014, being part of the Science and Technology Park, we had the first privilege of meeting with Minister Naledi Pandor when she visited the Science and Technology Park in August 2014. So we're there. And then from that period, we applied for the TIA seed funding in partnership with ECDC, which is the Eastern Cape Development Corporation. I'll be honest with you, it hasn't been an easy journey. You know, when you're coming up with a new product, as much as Bridget said, sometimes you think about your innovation in terms of the social implications, but to convince the funders and the partners to buy into your concept, to prove the concept in terms of getting it to the level where you can commercialize, is another process on its own. Which is why then the role of government, and particularly your DST institutions, becomes important in our journey, because without the funding, like your seed funding from your TIA, from your innovation hub, we won't be where we are today. And through that process again, we started with the heat radar from 2015. 2016, we also entered the program for the hotspot innovation. And then we've worked with the innovation hub. We work with TIA, the innovation hub. We're also part of the grassroots innovation program from CSIR. So we work with the Department of Science and Technology, like different programs. But again, as Bridget also touched, some of the challenges that we encounter as grassroots innovators, as entrepreneurs in this space, where you have to prove your concept, the amount of time it takes you to develop that technology, develop the market, getting people excited, and make it relevant to your everyday use. Because sometimes when we think about technology, we always think applications, we always think about fancy gadgets. But sometimes when you meet a layman in the street, you need to be able to relate to that person to say, how does my hotspot talk to you as an ordinary citizen? I mean, if I come to you and say, okay, here's the hotspot, it allows you to operate your geyser like a kettle. People are like, really? So, I mean, it's like a common language, something that you can relate to, because I was also intimidated by some of the technologies that existed in the energy efficiency space. I didn't study science, I didn't study any of those in terms of energy. So there were like concepts or devices already in the market, but I never felt they talked to me because I couldn't relate to them in terms of the social side of things. As I said, I'm a social scientist, so I always like to think and look at things in a social way. So for us, that's what we've been trying to do over the years, to be out there. And one of the challenges, again, when you are an entrepreneur or a grassroots innovator, sometimes you have to get to that space where you decide whether I'm in this thing full-time or I do it as a part-time. When you start with your innovation, you've got your 8 to 5 job, but you realize I'm not doing justice to my business. So at some stage, we have to exit the formal employment and hustle. And to hustle is another story on its own. Because the funders, most of the time, they fund your concept, your project. But there is no one at this stage, until you commercialize, who is ready to give you money for your working capital. We know how hard it is to have your overheads. And sometimes, in some of the programs, when you apply, as Bridget said again, one of the things that you do on a daily basis, you look for competitions. You look for what's out there in terms of the funding that is quick cash that I can get to get my business up and running. And you go to funders, you meet them every day, and they're like, how committed are you? You have to keep on convincing them that I'm passionate, I'm in here, I'm committed to this, and that takes a lot of effort. And really, to sit there every day, you look for funding. And on average, it doesn't take you less than a week to do your funding application with all the funders. And I must be honest, one of the opportunities that I've been afforded from 2014 to date is being part of the Clean Tech Global Accelerator, Business Accelerator Program. And I would like to urge everyone, the stakeholders, the funders, everyone who's got a role to play, to really invest in that, in similar programs, because Unlike the traditional approach where you are told that, okay, when you go to look for funding, they say, bring your fancy business plan. And we know for a business plan, you need to appoint a consultant who's gonna be writing your business plan, because the bankers and FDIs are not willing to accept the business plan if it's not written by a consultant. And from the accelerator program, that's one thing I've learned, the business model, which Bridget also talked about, is that it's you as an innovator, as an entrepreneur, who has to write your business plan, because you understand your business model better than anyone. You understand your product. But how do we challenge the status quo from the funders who like, bring your business plan and he has to have a stamp from a consultant? And I'm like, I know my product. I've been through the process of a business development model. I've validated my market. I've interviewed everyone. Now here's my business plan. Is it for you to accept needs to have a stamp from a consultant to say it's written by who and who? So those are the challenges that we are faced with. And as being part of an accelerator program again, I've realized that sometimes we get trapped sitting behind the desk and doing research and going through the net and all that. But for you to understand your business, your product, and raise awareness and get the market, you need to be out there. That also needs money. For me to be here today as part of this DST program, the Youth Indaba, I had to make a call to say, okay, from the little money that we've got from your tier funding and from the Innovation Hub, it's worth it for me to go in Joburg and be part of this program, because you have to think strategic. And sometimes most of entrepreneurs or innovators, they don't have that kind of money. I've been privileged enough to have like a little funding that I can use to be here. But really, the challenge is really on the funding part of it, the working capital, the existing funding models that are used by FDIs. I mean, even to get a risk capital funding, to get your product to commercialize, your funders, okay, they want an off-take agreement. For you to have an off-take agreement, you need to have convinced the market. Okay, as part of research and development phase, you get the seed funding in terms of to do, let's say, for example, now I'm being funded by the Innovation Hub, where we can develop the concept further in terms of doing the tests. So to get to the stage where you commercialize, you really need to have proven the concept and being out there and get off all these off-take agreements. But again, always becomes a chicken and egg situation, because what comes first? The small-scale manufacturing and then, or the off-take agreements. So that's the trap now where we always find ourselves into, but that's the journey so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Tapelo.
Thank you, Program Director Sanbonani, Molweni, Dumelang, Dimacheroni, Tobela, Goeiemorgen. Good morning, ladies and gents. I think I've done justice to the official languages. But in the interest of time, let me get straight to the point. Thank you, Program Director, for the opportunity to share. I will just give a quick talk because of the time. I think the presentation was actually prepared to be longer than the 7 minutes that I got. Honorable Minister and all the dignitaries, good morning as well, and all the delegates present here today. It is indeed an honor to come and share in this very historic event where we are looking at creating opportunities for the youth through science and technology and innovation. Indeed, one must say that the initiatives that we have observed over the years in the country suggests that we need to take a radical approach. We have seen initiatives at different corners of South Africa. In the Eastern Cape, they'll tell you about this one. In Gauteng, they've got this. In this province, they've got this. But in the main, the country continues to swim in the pool of unemployment. Now, the big question is, what is the impact of these initiatives? One would say the world is talking about the Silicon Valley. In the country, what are we talking about? we should have initiatives that will have an impact that takes us to that level, where we know that when you mention the word Silicon Valley, a lot of innovation is attached to that. And I think that's a challenge for us. When we talk about creating opportunities, we are in fact saying we shouldn't be in a situation where when a young person in the country is innovative, his innovation ends in court processes. I mean, it was really a disaster that something that we were supposed to celebrate ended up in court. And as the country, as young people of the country, I did not see you going to court in numbers to support an innovation so that other young people can continue to be innovative. Like we normally gather in courts when there are people are in courts for various reasons. But in this case, my only disappointment is that our approach to innovation is still something that we need to work on. Now, we need to then challenge our youth in the country to say, in an era of radical economic transformation, we in this space of STI, we should be concentrating much on issues of digital transformation to say, in this whole era, how do we ensure that we advance in issues of digital transformation? How do we ensure that we bring in innovation from all these things that affects our daily life? And indeed, this will ensure that entrepreneurs that we have today are entrepreneurs that will actually be sustainable even in the coming years. I am Honorable Minister. I am very unpopular in some quarters because I have always questioned why do we have a workshop in 2017 with young people and telling them to start catering companies. I have a problem with that. In 2017, CSIR brings young people into workshops. They run a lot of workshops every week at CSIR, and I sit there and listen, and here is a consultant of CSIR telling young people about catering opportunities. Surely we have a problem as a country, and I'm here to challenge indeed all the young people here to say opportunities exist for us to really become change agents. I don't know how you will become a change agent in a catering environment. I don't know how. So I am here to discourage and to challenge you to be change agents, not verbally, but by introducing innovative solutions in the market. The South African Youth Chamber of Commerce have actually taken an initiative in 2010 when there was a buzz around the World Cup. And we started what we call the BizJam initiative. This initiative is the one that we use to go to different provinces. It's our innovative flagship project. We are going to provinces and saying to young people, even those who are in catering, come here and understand the importance of maybe using the catering money that you are making to launch an innovation, because even in that space, there's innovative ways that must be introduced of doing things, so that even when we go to events, we can see that the future looks bright. I mean, we cannot forever worship Silicon Valley to say it's the home of Apple, it's the home of Facebook, but now, who are we a home to? We can't be a home to protests, burning tires. We can't be a home to gender-based violence. We can't be known for killings. We can't be known for murders. We ought to be a home like the Silicon Valley is known. Even people who are born not even 15 years ago, they know when you say Silicon Valley, you are talking about a home of innovation. I am challenging South African youth today. Let us turn South Africa around so that we become also a home of innovation. I'm here to plead with the agencies of the Department of Science and Technology to really partner with us. You have been for years viewed as friends of the academia. We are in an era of what we call a disruption. And in this case, I want to talk of a disruption in a technology sense and emerging trends, not in a negative manner of banning 22 schools in a week in Vuwane. We're talking about constructive disruption in technologies and in emerging trends. Now, the issue here, why there has been a gap, is because our agencies of the Department of Science and Technology, even when we write to them requesting a meeting, the CEO will ask, what is there to discuss with the South African Youth Chamber of Commerce? We are a research institution. So their view, Minister, has been that they must relate to universities and the academic field. That's why we are in this situation where there has been a gap and we have not been able to actually speak to each other and work and collaborate so that the innovation that you find at the CSIR is able to influence the way we do things in communities. That's a major challenge. And we are saying today that that collaboration has to happen so that even all these institutions that has got facilities that must empower our people, we know that the major challenge at the moment for our entrepreneurs is issues of funding, like my former panelist said. And we should find a way to say, how do we find these institutions of government coming to the party so that we can be able to save some of the funds that must go into young people having to pay for even things in relation to intellectual property. I'm sure if we collaborate, we will find ourselves and find a way of ensuring that those barriers, such as funding, are addressed. As I conclude, the South African Youth Chamber of Commerce, in this era as we move towards the 2020, after the adoption of the National Youth Policy, we also started a program here that we call Youth Entrepreneurship Campaign 2020. This is informed, of course, by the low numbers of students who are pursuing science, technology, engineering, and math disciplines at the various institutions of higher learning. And that is, of course, informed by the ground from primary and we understand the issues. But now we are saying, even when they enroll for these course disciplines at first year, a lot of them don't graduate in these disciplines. And we ought to attack this issue and say, what then do we do to ensure that a science student who enrolls at a university, he does not graduate with a BA admin? This is an issue that we need to address. And through the Youth Entrepreneurship Campaign, we are then said 2020, we are saying, in line with the National Youth Policy, there has to be systems and support that ensures that when you want to be a scientist, you graduate as a scientist. You don't end up with a B admin. That must be addressed. And then, because the problem is that it goes on like that, and then it goes to what the GEM report tells us in the end, and what the FinScope research tells us to say, South African youth do not start enterprises. Because at university, you think that after getting a degree, I had that opportunity as well when I was at university, where I was given an impression that after graduating, there's a company car waiting for me, a Porsche office, credit cards, and all that. But now, where do we find ourselves in reality? You find a science graduate at the corner of William Nicole and something with a placard saying, I have a degree in science and what, carrying that placard. And we know for the fact that when we grew up, when you find somebody at a robot, we call those people beggars, we call them hobos and the like. Now, when a science graduate joins that group, then there's a problem. Then there's a problem. It means in that lecture halls where he spent time, there was no element of entrepreneurship. He was only taught that the degree will open doors for you. There is no degree that will open door for you. We are now challenging this country to ensure that in every discipline, especially in this environment of STI, there has to be an element of entrepreneurship. People must know that we are giving you this information and knowledge so that you can start your own company. Nobody owes you a job. Program Director, as I conclude, let me leave this Indaba with these words that we are going to continue with our advocacy. The issue of inclusive growth for entrepreneurs, which others will call radical economic transformation. Our position continues to say there's nothing radical about 30%. Even at school, you should actually fail if you get 30%. Now, the South African Youth Chamber of Commerce will continue to advocate to say radical economic transformation will only happen if 70% of procurement goes to us. Number two, legislation on set-asides must be finalized ASAP so that those who start enterprises don't collapse. The last one, all those who deliver services, who render services and goods, they must be paid within 30 days. Transformation delayed is transformation denied. Entrepreneurship is the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Tapelo. Our last speaker in the panel, Thulane Chafuta, the president of the Youth Council. This one was the president also, part of young people in commerce. This one now is the bigger president of all youth, not only in commerce.
Program Director, in conclusion, let me acknowledge the Minister, the Deputy Minister. I've also seen the Deputy Chairperson of the NYDA. I'm sure that I hate starting inputs with an apology because it's like you are looking for sympathy. But I'm sure had I submitted an apology because of how I feel, it would have sounded like an excuse. But I thought this session is important enough, despite what I contracted in Cape Town yesterday. Well, Program Director, a well-respected activist in the field of research and development and knowledge generation, a former president of SASCO, David Maimela. Good morning. The first thing I want to say is that when there is something wrong, we would be the first ones to say it. And I think it calls on us to say it even when there are right things. One of those is that we are meeting here as a result of a commitment that was made by the minister in the budget vote speech. I'm highlighting that because in some instances, things are just said in Parliament without them being realized. I think we should commend the leadership of the minister to make sure that they stay true to the words they say, because we follow them through. The second thing is that the officials that you have sent to organize the session, Minister, have tried their best in engaging us in informing the content of this session. This session is sitting in June, declared as the Youth Month, under the theme that says the Year of OR Tambo, Advancing Youth Economic Empowerment. I'm sure in our reflections and deliberations, we shall take time to reflect on what does that mean in our case. But the starting point for me is that Stats SA has done a profiling of young people in South Africa. And that profiling confirms something that we have known for some time, that South Africa, like the rest of Africa, has officially entered the demographic window of youth bulge. And that essentially means that we have a youthful population than any other population group in South Africa. That presents us with two things. It presents us with opportunities, but juxtaposed with that, it also presents us with threats. A youth bulge becomes an opportunity only when we invest in the lives of young people when they are still young. But the same youth bulge presents us with a threat to the very same essence of our stability and democratic cause if we do not invest in the lives of young people. And that becomes a threat to the future of our society. we cannot sit and hope that we are going to draw a demographic dividend in our youthful population if we don't invest in the lives of young people. We can't sit and watch and say we have a youthful population and keep repeating that and think that it will deliver a cadre of young population that later on in their lives will be independent economic players. We need to make those investments now. And some of the case that we must argue is that when we are still busy with theoretical gymnastics, whether we need free education or not, as an example of this point, that investment will be made, whether now or later. If we don't invest in the lives of young people through education, knowledge, and skills now, we will make those investments later in the form of free housing, free healthcare, free water, free electricity, and all the other frees that you can think of. And so it is not true that if we cannot afford free quality education now, it resolves the challenge. We're only postponing it. And so we must be happy that we still have a cadre of young people who rise and demand quality education instead of standing on the other queue and say, we demand tenders, even when they do not have skills to deliver on those opportunities. And so these investments must be made for us to reap the demographic dividend. I also want to make this point because it is very difficult for many to understand. Youth development is not events. There are only 3 things that make up youth development. One is that we give young people space to express their youthfulness. 2, we link young people to opportunities. 3, we provide young people with support to seize those opportunities. Those are the 3 determining factors that distinguish youth development from any other thing. The role of STI. We know that scarcity of resources in our society presents us with competing priorities. There is a question whether we must take so much money to housing, to roads, to education, to health. In addition to that, we know that we keep experiencing challenges in our lives on a daily basis. We have had challenges of load shedding. We have challenges of droughts in some parts of South Africa. I mean, we just come from an era where for the first time it was uncertain if the most vulnerable in society will receive their social grants. Although science, technology, and innovation may in its own right be a priority, but it has a special and extraordinary positioning in society. And that positioning is that of being a priority, but also an enabler for the achievement of the other priorities. It is equally a trigger that all these other competing priorities are delivered even better. Science, technology, and innovation should actually be fully exploited as a tool for greater and faster development. STI can deliver better integrated service delivery. Let me make an example about this integrated service delivery. Some of the resources are wasted in a person who comes from the Eastern Cape like me, getting a free house, a low-cost house in the Eastern Cape. When I get to Gauteng, I still come and be in the list. Same country, same government, different systems. But through STI, we should have exploited those opportunities long time ago that were able to catch up on those people and say, no, but in our system we can pick up that in the simplest of ways, you have benefited on this. But we do not only leverage STIs to catch up on those who are defrauding the system, but it would go a long way in enhancing the experience of those who must access these services. Can you just imagine if you cannot experience how frustrating it should be for a person who's declared an indigent to go and access services in a municipality? When the child of the same person must go into a school, they must go to lengths to prove that they are indigent. When they must access health services, they must produce a completely different set of evidence that indeed they are indigent. That shows that we're not fully exploiting STIs. What should be some of the focus areas of STI in relation to youth development? One is that STI, the strategic thrust of our work on STI should seek to connect young people to opportunities, empower them with skills, and thereby position them as agents of transformation in society. The priority focus areas of this work should be buttressed around the following pillars, which I will just raise loosely. We can debate them. One, the promotion of science, technology, and innovation. Believe it or not, there are people out there who still believe that science and technology is something for super intelligent people. It's for people who reside in certain areas. And so we must go and demystify that through promoting STI. We must undertake youth empowerment through capacity building in STI. We must do promotion of entrepreneurship in STI for job and wealth creation, not in any way undervaluing social entrepreneurship. We must also undertake knowledge sharing and transfer, because current practitioners in the field are aging, if not aged, and therefore we need a new generation. There are many investments in government that go through programs like infrastructure development, green economy, digital migration, SKA, huge investments. Our question should be, what should be the opportunities for young people there? Those projects should be leveraged to provide skills and training opportunities for young people. Those projects should be utilized to provide workplace experience for already qualified young people. Those projects should be utilized to provide mass employment opportunities for young people. Those projects should be utilized to provide economic opportunities for young entrepreneurs. And we should, in our endeavor, position ourselves to leverage the opportunities of the fourth industrial revolution. I thank you.
Thank you, Tulane. I think let us give them another round of applause. I think that you will agree with me. If you don't, I will convince myself that you do. That they've been brilliant speakers, all of them focusing in the various areas that they focus on. The smaller president, the bigger president, and then our esteemed ladies here in their areas. You know, Minister, as I was sitting here, I'm thinking that the acronym that is a buzz acronym in this Indaba is STI. And I was thinking that, you know, when you sit in cabinet, on the one hand is the Minister of Health. He says, the Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Mutwale, they say, let us discourage STI. And you stand up and say, let's promote STI. And then, you know, and you know, that can collapse the cabinet, you know. So these are the rules of engagement as we promote STI. Is that I'm going to take 2 rounds of hands because of time. And I'm going to identify 4 people. And then in the second round, I'll do the same thing. Please indicate that your question is for a specific person. And I would really, really plead with you that you ask at least 1 question. Or you make 1 comment. 1 comment or 1 question. 4 hands, may I please see them? I'm glad the house is almost 80% full. Minister, the house is 80% full. Young people are here. The lady there at the back, I don't know if there's mics roving around. If not, then you'll have to use the biggest volume you might master. The gentleman there at the back, the lady here in the middle, and the gentleman there, who will come to the second round. Yeah, yeah. Let's do that. Yeah. Well, I can just smuggle you as well because it's just 5 hands I've seen. So we'll take 5 and then 4 in the second round. You may start.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Patega Babiso from the CSIR. To the last gentleman that presented, thank you so much for the insight. My question is really to how we provide solutions to the youth that are in the unfortunate event of completing their matric, and yet they're highly, innovative. They've got ideas. What do we do in that space? I mean, it's not. Sometimes it's circumstances that would not allow them to complete even a matric or a degree, but they're highly innovative. Are we able to create spaces for them, to take their ideas forward?
Sure. The second speaker. Yeah, you. Yeah. You can briefly say who you are before you speak. Yeah. Next. Sure, thanks. The third speaker? The person I designated as number 3?
Good morning. Rasunan Zero from ARC PPRI. To the gentleman with the South African scarf, I forgot your name, sir. I feel like we've had this talk before, such motivations. I feel like we've been motivated like this before. So it's motivation every day, but there isn't an element of action on it, which becomes very normal and pointless to get such motivation because it becomes a staple food. Whereas we've got ideas, and these ideas just come and we pitch them like we said, there's no funding for it. Where is the funding? Administration got the funding, they buying whatever they're buying with the funds. So I'm not sure if it's a concern but rather what I'm saying is instead of motivating us, it should start from the top. Our administration should be such that it promotes such innovations, because I feel like our minister, when they're sitting with these I don't know, panels, whatever. She's been hearing this herself. I'm pretty sure of that. But there's nothing happening because the administration is not that promotes such ideas to us. So the key and the importance of education, or rather the vitalness of us being innovated, should be that we know that you guys have our back in all essence. So stop motivating and start acting, please.
Sure. Sure. I think the comment is directed to the minister too. Okay, the fourth speaker. Yes, yeah. Thanks. Thanks. The last speaker.
My name is Karabo Manne from KMC Digital, and we do business process engineering to prepare small businesses for funding. And my comment, well, it's basically a comment and a question at the same time. I believe that we can discuss policy all day long, but if it doesn't marry with systems within government, then it is just superstition. Because now I just got 2 calls from 2 separate companies. I used to get calls before that would ask me for subcontracting. Immediately after they won that tender, they canceled my contract with them, right? So if we can just ensure that there is a system in government, in treasury, that makes sure that there is subsequent follow-ups with that main contractor that says, look, how is this person performing? Because otherwise they'll just cancel the contract and exploit us, especially in science and technology. When you have an innovation, you think you have won. When somebody calls you in, you bring in everything. You bring in everything that is intellectual property to you, and they just take it, submit it, and then they are done. And again, on procurement, I believe that government must be more proactive. I really liked the fact that the minister put in big data, because I was studying big data at the time, this year. And the more proactive you are in terms of science and technology, because we're not living in 2017, we're living in 2030, 2040. We're developing for those times, we're developing for the future. So if the government can be more proactive, send an RFP, request for proposal, that says, look, we want clean water solutions, we want this, and we will submit them. We don't have any problem, and we will work on them. And if we can have maybe a promise or something from government that says, look, your project, we will take it up when it is time, then we can go and get funding, and we can get it, I feel, much, much easier if we already have a commitment.
Sure. Thanks. You respond to a question that has been directed to you, brief, straight to the point, so that we can proceed. If you feel you have not been addressed in terms of the comments, please don't indulge. Please come forward here for purpose of recording to answer. Who starts first? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, sure. Thank you very much, Program Director. In fact, I just want to agree with the comment of the collaboration of DST with basic education and DHET to ensure that entrepreneurship indeed forms part of the curriculums, starting from primary right up to university. The issue of motivation. In fact, I'm not a motivational speaker, I must clarify. I'm an economic transformation activist. Now, my job is to advocate for you. However, action must happen at the departmental level, in government. So I don't want anyone to say, we've heard this motivation before. We will continue to talk because we want action to take place. This is what we call advocacy. So all I'm saying is that all these issues that we are raising, we even go to an extent of going to parliament, to portfolio committees to present these issues. So that's why now you see action in some areas, and we are not the only ones advocating. There's also other lobby groups and chambers, your Black Business Council and others. So we are collaborating with them. We'll differ then when somebody says 51% and we say 70%, but in the overall, we are saying action must happen so that young people are empowered. The last one also on the STEM, the support for graduates. That's why I'm saying the BizJam sessions are also looking into that, because it's worrying us indeed that you'll find that a person who's supposed to be a scientist, he ends up in education because, of course, it's an easy way to become an educator or something. So part of that is that our engagement with DST is going to be more and more vigorous so that some action happens, because I want to believe that we will have this Indaba like annually or so that we can come and report back to say, based on the issues that were raised at the inaugural Indaba, this is progress that has happened both from the department, including their agencies. That's why we are even raising that agencies have not been cooperating with us. When we say us, we are referring to the youth sector, and something must happen. Thank you.
Well, the issue about the plight of young people who may or may not even complete grade 12 and get opportunities is essentially the essence of the challenge. Yintoni umgca wembuku ngesilungu? But essentially umgca wembuku is like a linear, dogmatic route that you have to enter ECD, go grade 1 up to grade 12, and then go out, without the introduction of various exit points that take into consideration your own talents, the prospects of your own development, and where you can make better input. Instead of the system fitting to support existing talents, the system takes you and says one size fits all and push you into the hole, you know? So our system, especially in as far as innovation is concerned, you can't define it as starting and ending here. So it must allow young people to express their youthfulness through science, technology, and innovation. Look, I have appetite on this motivation thing. But what I want to, let me just say one thing, that we don't need to talk less. We need to talk more, but link the talk to action, you know? Because that's the only way we're going to find solution. In conceptualizing this science, I fully agree with that comment. Like I said, we tend to take science, technology, and innovation as something that is far-fetched. Imagine for a moment what would have happened with our lives now if we did not have cell phones, it means you must be fixed in a chair in the house for you to receive that call. What does that mean about your mobility? Imagine the frustration of waiting for a person. Well, maybe David is waiting for his girlfriend who says, I'm coming to pick you up. The panic in waiting with every car that passes, you peep on the window. But with innovation that comes with the disruption of Uber, you are able to track how many minutes is this person away, such that you can use the other waiting time productively, you know? And so that's how close we must bring STI to our lives. And lastly, there's NDP and policies. Please allow me to make just this one point. NDP is Vision 2030. And many of us fall into a trap of thinking that we have 30 years to achieve the vision. No, it's 13 years, 1-3. And that's why I was laughed at in Parliament when I said it's not a long-term vision. And I still hold the view. If you start schooling this year at age 7, it means you are going to use 12 years of this lifespan in the schooling system. You are only left with 1 year. The NDP may not have touched your life in any significant way, provided we introduce catalysts that will propel faster and better and even greater delivery of the noble goals that are held in the NDP. And correctly, STI should be one of those catalysts that are introduced to propel the implementation of the goals of the NDP. Otherwise, I want to argue, Mav, we may be holding a false promise against the NDP. And STI belongs to a community of problem solvers. When you see a challenge as an aspiring scientist, as an aspiring innovator, you get excited, you don't despair that, hey, there is this big challenge. You see an opportunity to think deeper, innovate, and bring solutions. Siyabonga.
Thanks. That brings us to the end of the first session. Now, if you look at the program, unlike many Indaba, is it called in plural terms Indaba? Unlike many Indaba that you see on TV or read about in the newspaper, this Indaba started with a bang. You see, the Honorable Minister is somewhere down there as a speaker. It's not to say she's not honorable or she's not important. She is important. But because she's here with her colleagues in the department to listen and to engage, the program is structured deliberately and consciously in that way, so that the young people take the big chunk of this forum to engage, and that is why we started with the dialogue at this highest level. So you can see that you are the most valuable guests of this Indaba. I think you must give yourself a round of applause. So thank you very much. My co-conspirator, Mava, says that I must close this session by 10. So the second round, unfortunately, is forfeited. But we are still here the whole day, so you will have a bite as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, David. The second round is not forfeited because we're still going to engage further for the whole day. We've got thematic sessions, and the issues that have arisen from the panel debate are feeding very nicely into the thematic issues that we will deal with during the day. So don't despair, we will engage further. Without much further ado, the DG, as I promised, is going to welcome us into this session. When somebody welcomes you in their environment, they are literally saying, feel at home. And in our context here, it's an invitation to engage further, to open our minds, and make sure that we leave something in the minds of people who attended this session. The DG is also going to talk to us about the objectives of the conference. He is going to talk to us about the theme, which is very important, creating opportunities for youth in STI. Not I attended a conference and I just deliberately took down the theme. I was excited to see this one because it's concise, it's pointed, and it's goal-oriented. Let me just read you that theme and you tell me what it is. Fighting to advance the struggle for the advancement of youth partnerships to achieve a coherent program of transformation and development in the context of a changing global environment for the prosperity of future generations today and beyond. I'm excited about this theme. It's very concise, and I think the DG is going to point to it very nicely like the panelists have done. DG?
No, thank you very much, Program Director. I also like to acknowledge your other facilitator who's done a great job this morning, David. Thank you very, very much. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Minister, Minister Pando, and then also the Honorable Deputy Minister Ramakwaza Msibi, who has also joined us. The members of the board of the National Youth Development Agency, the President already here of the South African Youth Chamber of Commerce, the President of the South African Youth Council. I've also been told that we had invited the chief executive officers of the entities that we work with in the Ministry of Science and Technology. I've seen colleagues from the HSRC. I think I've seen somebody from TIA. I hope they are all here because some of the issues, yes, Paulo is here, issues that have been raised here are important for the entities as well. Industry rep, representative from national and provincial governments. And I've also been alerted that today we have colleagues from the Swaziland Ministry of ICT. Where are they? They are here? Welcome, welcome, welcome. They are here to learn and to see how we engage the youth. And then all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked to keep this welcoming to about 5 minutes. So I'm afraid, Program Director, the theme will be shorter than you would have anticipated. But I'd like then on behalf of the ministry to welcome all of you to this Youth in Science, Technology and Innovation in Indaba. The Indaba comes at a critical point where more focus has been placed on using science, technology and innovation to realize the inclusive development agenda of our country. It also happens at a point where, as it has already been said this morning, exponential technology advances continue to disrupt and transform the way we live, the way we work, and the way we play. It also offers us an opportunity to collectively reflect and engage on inclusion of the youth, South Africa's future in science, technology, and innovation in line with the theme of creating opportunities for youth through science, technology, and innovation. Nothing about the youth, for the youth, without the youth. The Indaba is aligned to the National Development Plan's goal of South Africa's unleashing the energies of its citizens, growing an inclusive economy, building capabilities, enhancing the capability of the state and leaders working together to solve complex problems. We all know that the world is much more complex today than it was a couple of years ago. Therefore, the Indaba is being held as we go into the second phase of the implementation of the National Development Plan, a phase that focuses on South Africa laying the foundations for more intensive improvements in productivity and innovation across state, business, and social sectors becoming pervasive. It is with this regard to the implementation of this second phase of the NDP that the ministry then took the decision that has put more emphasis on the inclusion of youth with a role and responsibility in South Africa's long-term prosperity. The Indaba draws on the principles of the National Youth Policy and recognizes that an innovative youth population is key in enabling South Africa to contribute to the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. The emphasis on inclusion of youth is made noting the progress that our system of innovation has made to date. We should always acknowledge progress that has been made, otherwise we will always think we are starting from scratch. This progress includes improved performance in research and development, black South African and female scientists whose solutions are not only relevant for the South African context, but are appropriate for the Africa and developing world. Integration of innovation in key delivery of basic services. And we are seeing, I think, these innovations beginning to contribute to the delivery of basic services. Of course, Cabinet has also made a number of resolutions on the adoption of locally developed technology, because this also came, I think, in the early session, that you have these innovations, but we don't have a mechanisms of adopting them. So there are about 4 points around how Cabinet has adopted this, but I will not go through the details of that today. But in conclusion, Indaba enables us to reflect on strengthening what already works, addressing existing gaps, and strengthening cooperations in the system of innovation, as we all have a common goal of an inclusive and prosperous South Africa. I also like to give you a sense of what we thought we would get out of this Indaba. So the expected outputs are 3. The first one is a declaration which commits us collectively to harmonize science, technology, and innovation programs to the benefit of the youth. We also hope to have recommendations for an action plan that will be used to further inclusion of youth in science and technology, and we hope we will use that as a basis when we meet in a year's time or 2 years' time to say what exactly did we do in the period between the last Indaba. And then lastly, recommendations on how to improve the science, technology, and innovation dialogue with the youth. So with those few words, you're all welcome, and we hope we'll have fruitful engagements for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gigi. We indeed feel very welcome. We're going to move on quite fast. The Deputy Chair of the NYDA, I'm told, is already here. Is she here? Okay. The NYDA, as you are aware, is a state institution or agency that is charged with the responsibility of addressing youth development issues in South Africa. They are running a very nice program called South African Youth Awards. I think it was launched in 2012. And this year, in 2017, Neile, is it Neile, who won a first prize award in science and technology innovation. I don't know if they are here. They were there in Parliament during the budget vote. Is Neile here? Okay. I'm told she's not here, but that's a very interesting program that encourages the youth to engage in development initiatives in their communities and in the country as a whole. Bavelile Hlongwa is going to talk to us about the role of youth in employment opportunities in the STI environment.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you see me. I hope you really see me, because I see that this stand here is compromising my visibility. So probably as part of science and technology and in innovation, we must start having, those adjustable ones now, so that at least we, Let me greet all of you, the Minister of Science and Technology, Honorable Naledi Pandor, and other members of Cabinet that might be in our midst, the President of SAICI, the Chamber of Commerce, President, DG, and all protocol observed, and particularly young innovators and scientists and technologists in our midst, be all greeted. It is indeed a very interesting times and an interesting resolution that has been implemented from the side of science and technology to have this important gathering. I believe that for us to be able to achieve anything, we must start talking about them. So we're going to see a lot of advocating and a lot of resolutions, then we'll see implementation. It's just that we must try and manage the times between the lobbying and the discussions. But the young people should be at the center of all global change and innovation. And this is not just for South Africa alone, but it's for the world in its entirety. But South Africa also is not excluded. We need to be able to empower them as development agents and peace agents. If we also have to try and look at how can we improve or see to the upliftment of society through working with young people and in our societies. We know the National Development Plan, we have spoken so much about it and how it plans to take us somewhere in 2030. But I always say 2030 is in a short space of time, but there's nothing in the NDP that says the outcomes, we must see them in 2030. Along that time as we go about, we must start seeing those outcomes coming through. And it then means we must start investing and injecting catalyst for change to ensure that those particular outcomes start coming forth. So it is very important that we are able to do that. As the NYDA, we really welcome this important initiative from the department, and we are hoping that it's going to be an annual gathering so that at least when we come with a lot of challenges here, this year, next year, we are able to speak a different story, that after the discussion we had in 2017, June, in 2018, we don't have those challenges anymore. In fact, we have new ones now of advancing from our own development. I think that is very important. It is also important that as we meet, I saw that we'll take some sort of resolutions. It is important that we take resolutions that we can implement and track, so that at least when we meet again, we are able to see where we are. I think there's also a lot of stuff that we can cover in terms of responding to economic demands, addressing challenges that we know, the unemployment, poverty, and inequality. I always say, if we are to deal with issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequality in South Africa, we will need to, as young people, to look at those challenges and say, how can we provide solutions? Because if we can say that, we'll come with a lot of innovative ways of addressing issues. I mean, the issue of water in the country, everyone's thinking, what can we do if there's no rain, there's no water? But the biggest issue of water is not the fact that it's not raining this year or last year. The issue is, how have we dealt with water in the previous years? And how are we responding to the issue of water as we see the water levels in dams going down? Because if we had thought about recycling the water, even in the rural areas where we take water to, because rural people must have water as well. If we had thought about recycling and investing on recycling infrastructure, I'm sure the water levels will be better than now. But then we still have an opportunity. There's a lot of young people here and others that did not come here that can still come up with how can we recycle water in rural areas. How can we ensure that we see an increase in innovation in the concept of desalination of the salt water to potable water, so that you can start blending your water? I mean, those are kinds of thoughts that we should be able to have. The example that President of SAICI picked here, the issue of SASA and paying of grants, is it warranted that our South African government has to put up a tender for a 15 billion rands profit to an individual company? Or probably we should move with a level of innovation such that the government has a system itself that is developed by these young South African people to actually do the payouts and even be able to pay out to grant beneficiaries in rural areas. I'm sure we can come up with a solution, because it means every time the issue of that contract is up, we'll see a lot of chaos because everyone will be contesting to actually get their hands into that 15 billion per 5 years. So those are some of the examples that I think we can always think about. There's many other things. The issue of grassroots technology and developing. Maybe we need to get into a spot where all the researching institutes come together and tell us how much, or we can tell them that 40% of their research should focus on our research as young people. Because when you develop a commodity or a product, what also is needed is a prototype testing. That prototype testing, we do not as young people have financing and resources to actually do. But research institutes can, at that 40% level, be able to have those opportunities for us. It's very important that we are able to do that. And let's also agree that with all the issues of jobs, it's unfair to the old guard to expect them to create jobs for us. The new, and in fact it's not new, the realization that we must make is that we will create jobs for each other. Youth will create jobs for each other. That's why in the NYDA, we said in the strategic planning yesterday and said, we need to find a way of reconciling all these little 30% of funding here and there, which are also guarded critically by the criteria that are bank criteria for funding of young people. Reconstitute and then define a criteria that will be able to be accommodative to young people, so that at least those young enterprises, those small enterprises that we start with, even in the space of science, technology, and innovation, we are able to fund them. Because if you go to CSIR, CSIR has its own criteria there. And in its criteria, they do look like a bank, same as ITC. And it's not their main function to fund young people and fund new ideas. And let me tell you, it's very difficult for the old guard to fund, because to them they must just maintain what is there. But for us as young people, we need someone who will be able to take a leap of a risk and fund an idea that has just been tested at a prototype level. It's very important that we are able to do that. How much time did you give me? Okay, just 2 things. And then lastly, I think there are things that are also important. The marketing of those products that you will produce from all that innovation. We don't get to be able to get into the market. We are going to be approaching a number of these organizations that are dealing with products introduction into the market. We will be also trying to get partnerships with them, so that at least when you've innovated and you've gotten that funding, you are able to make the product, at least the community in South Africa knows about it. But it is also important to couple that with buying local. I think we, as young people, we are also a group of people that just don't like local things. When we get to have, that little profit we've made from that innovative business of ours, we go and buy Louis Vuitton from Italy and buy a German car, etc., etc. We don't buy local stuff. And I will say to us, as we continue to be innovative and resolve our own problems locally, let's also buy our local products. Myself, I'm committing to buy that piece of product for operating a geyser. I will get details and I will buy it. Because if I can't buy it as a deputy chairperson of the NYDA, Bavelil, who else is going to buy it? Who else is willing to save the energy and whatnot? There's a gas fracking that is coming. I saw an article, Minister of Mining, Honorable Msebenzi Zwane, was saying we are moving into that space. What can we do in the space of science, technology, and innovation to actually get products out of that gas? Because that gas can change our lives. And research says, I'm from the petroleum background as well, I have an engineering degree. So I've been exposed to understanding that research says we potentially have the second biggest reserve if we have a second biggest reserve of natural gas in South Africa, what kinds of products can we produce from there to effectively impact our energy cost in the country and our lives as individuals and lives of people that will not necessarily work in the gas and do anything with those products, but people will just be, affected by the spin-offs of those particular things. On payments of service providers, government is struggling. But I can tell you, at NYDA, if you do business with us, we pay you within 21 days. And if ourselves as young people can pay in 21 days, what is difficult for the government to do so? And I'm challenging the government to be able to do so. And I'm saying thank you very much for this time. Umuntu has a lot that we'll have said, but we realize that time is very limited. But let's continue to be innovative and producing solutions that are going to assist the country to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, NYDA. I'm sure with the 42% number of the youth constituting South African population, you have a daunting task ahead of you. Now, we are going multilateral cooperation issues, and I hope Mampe is ready to come and talk to us about that. We are not an island in this space. We work with our continental partners, our global partners, and as she comes forward, I'm reminded of a philosopher. And I know there are scientists here, they will know what I'm talking about. A 7th century philosopher, Descartes, is Descartes, French. He said, I think, therefore I am. But an African philosopher, Zora Yacob, said, I think, therefore we are. I leave it up to you to think about it. We're not an island.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, our executives, CEOs of entities, our chair of the SADC region from Swaziland, the youth of South Africa, colleagues, good morning. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of what some of the opportunities are in the continent, specifically for the youth in STI. If we could have the presentation up, please. Thank you very much. If you could please go to the next slide. I just want to start by giving you a couple of statistics just to indicate why we think the youth is an asset for the continent. The youth in the continent makes up about 60% of the population. Next slide, please. With about 40% being under the age of 15, and the other 20% in addition being under the age between 15 and 24. Next slide. So that makes up about 60% of the African population, so 60% of 1 billion, that's about 720 million being the youth, people under the age of 24. Next slide, please. It's also indicated by the World Bank that we can expect this age group in the next few years to generate between 11 and 15% of GDP in the continent. That's a major labor force in the continent that needs to be harnessed. In order to achieve this, African governments need to create an enabling environment, and this is something that was touched upon by the previous speakers. I'll just, in my presentation, indicate what has the African continent, especially within the context of STI, put in place to create this enabling environment for our youth. If you look at, The African Union has come up with a long-term vision, and I hope it's long enough for the youth that is here. It goes up to the year 2063, and it firmly places STI in the center for development. It has gone further to put up what we call an STI strategy for Africa, called CSIR. And this strategy places the youth, just like Agenda 23, in the center of development. If you look at the aspirations of Agenda 23, there's an element that talks about development as a people-driven aspiration, equal opportunities and participation of women and youth in all activities of the continent. President Kwame Nkrumah, in his speech in 1963 at the inauguration of the Organization of the African Union, acknowledged this fact as well, that STI is a main contributor to development when he said, "It is within the possibility of science and technology to make even Sahara bloom into a vast field with verdant vegetation for agriculture and industrial development." And it's the reason that the continent has taken it upon itself to have strategies and policies and activities that firmly places STI in the center for development. The STI strategy for Africa expects of member states to be active in coming up with activities, policies, flagship initiatives that support STI, that support the youth. And if you look at the pillars of the STI strategy, it focuses on infrastructure development, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and this speaks to the youth that is here today. Most importantly, also technical competence. We cannot expect to achieve on all of this if we are not technically competent. And of course, an enabling environment that is provided by our governments. I'd just like to share with you some of the continental initiatives that open doors for the youth in the continent. The African Development Bank has developed a 10-year strategy that focuses on skills and technology. We have a number of initiatives. I will not go into all of those. The colleagues within the audience from the ICR program can be contacted for more details if you need. But we have a number of initiatives in the continent. If I could just list a few. The next Einstein Forum is a youth-driven initiative of the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences in the continent, and it concentrates on young people under the age of 42. It showcases contributions of Africa's brilliant youth to Africa's scientific emergence through its NEF fellowships and NEF ambassadors programs. We have a number of what we call Pan-African universities in the continent, currently 4 in number. The 5th one, it will be in South Africa, focusing on space sciences. But the 4 are terribly under-prescribed, especially by the youth in South Africa. And these 4 are in Nigeria, Kenya, Cameroon, and Algeria. If we want to understand the continent and to venture into the continent and open up markets in the continent, we need to understand what opportunities lie in the continent and what the continent has to offer. We have a number of NEPAD flagship initiatives that focuses on all of these scientific areas, and all of these are partly funded by South Africa together with other partners from the rest of the continent. If we come down to SADC, there are a number of strategies at the SADC level that have placed youth at the center of development. The Youth Strategy and Declaration at SADC, the Youth Employment Promotion Policy. If you look at the Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan, the RISDP, it requires sufficient human resources with appropriate qualifications. The SADC Strategic Plan on STI promotes women and youth participation in STI initiatives. And the SADC Industrialization Strategy and Roadmap also talks about accelerating the empowerment of youth and women to enable them to participate fully in economic development. So if we talk about the political will, we have shown through the various ministers, both in the continent and the region, that they have put structures in place, they have put policies in place, and it's up to the youth to take up those opportunities. Just to quickly go through a number of SADC funded, of South African funded SADC STI initiatives. We have SunBio, Southern African Network on Biosciences, that supports youth and women bio-entrepreneurs. I don't know if we've got Dr. Eric Chakaunya, who's the CEO of SunBio here, but all of these initiatives that are funded by the South African government in most part are available not just for the youth in South Africa, but the youth in Southern Africa to take part in. The Southern Innovation Support Program, which is co-funded by the Finnish government, supports collaboration between innovation systems in the region. We've been talking earlier this morning about regional innovation systems, and this program supports just that, innovations in the region. The African Institute of Mathematical Sciences currently supports about 24 South African students in pursuing their master's and PhD graduates, all in an effort of building this technical capacity in the continent. I'll quickly also go through just a number of initiatives. The SASAC, 2 minutes. I'll be quick. The focus is on system analysis. It's a partnership with our International Institute of Applied Systems in Vienna, but we have, in the last financial year, enrolled 21 PhD South African students to take part in the course. It's a center that's based at the University of the Western Cape. We also have a number of initiatives that focus on building research and innovation capacity through our SARIMA programs. Through the SADC Secretariat, we have endorsed a SADC Women in Science Charter, which also supports women and youth in Southern Africa. I will not go through the rest, but in the rest of the continent, we have about 26 signed science and technology agreements that offer opportunities for the youth to have short-term exchange programs with the rest of the continent. I also spoke about the Pan-African University and Space Sciences Institute in South Africa. And there are, of course, many other opportunities that I have not included here that offer the South African youth opportunities to study beyond the borders of South Africa. But because the presentation was limited to an African perspective, I've limited this to Africa. So, just to show you the last slide, it's predicted that by 2050, the countries highlighted on the screen will have the youngest population in the world, and this is mostly in the continent. In Africa, the youth represents currently more than 60% of the population, but more than 50% of the youth are illiterate. 25% have irrelevant skills, and 75% are unemployed. And with the opportunities that I've just presented, we do not have a reason to have these figures. And with that, I'd like to encourage you to take up all of these opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mampei, for those insightful inputs. Now, before I call on the Minister to round off the morning session, let me firstly remind you our hashtag, Youth Innovate. I hope everybody has got something to say, especially about opportunities that have been spoken about here. But secondly, I would like to make an announcement that those who are in grassroots innovation and BizTech, please note that there's going to be a session later after the thematic sessions, I think around 5 o'clock, strictly for those people who are in grassroots innovation and BizTech. There is a table where you can go and write your name if you are interested to attend the session. And lastly, on your program, you will see that there are thematic sessions. I think there's about 6 of them. So if you could just take time and look at those and decide which one you want to go to, because straight after this session, after the tea time, we will walk into those sessions. The doors outside in the corridor are clearly written which thematic session sits where. Now we're ready for the Minister to come and talk to us about this very important space, the STI space, the other STI. We are also very glad that the Minister, as it's mentioned, earlier that she has made good to her promise that she is going to gather the South African youth and explore ideas and talk to them about the opportunities in this area. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning to the Deputy Minister, Deputy Minister Kwamakwazo Msibi, Director General, Dr. Philip Jwacha, DDGs, Mr. Imran Patel, Dr. Thomas of the Heider, Mr. Thomas Makode, Mr. Mboneni Mofe, DDGs, all very clever young people in science and technology. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you this morning, but more especially extremely encouraged and enthused by the first panel that we had. We have such brilliant young people in our country, and we tend to undermine ourselves terribly. I also see Dr. Damonsa is here from SASTA. Good morning, welcome. I think in addition to what was proposed by the President of the Youth Council and the President of the Youth Chamber of Commerce, young people should, in addition to agitating for those opportunities they referred to, you need to tell people to stop calling you the lost generation. And you need to fight that kind of conceptualization of young people in our country. No generation can be lost. Every generation has its opportunities, and the responsibility of government and adults and business and state and private institutions is to create the platform that allows you to realize your potential. So you cannot be lost. We may lose you, but you are not a lost generation. And you must rigorously resist accepting such a definition of yourselves. I've been amazed that you've been quiet on that. You're not lost. You have potential that is immense. And we must make sure that that potential is realized. So part of the reason for gathering in this kind of manner is not, as the young man was afraid over there, merely for talking purposes, but it's also because part of the challenge we have in South Africa is one of information. Many of us are not aware of what various institutions do in our country. And this is because we don't create fora where we talk about ourselves and share information that might be useful, and that another young person would then take up and say, I didn't know that. I should approach TIA, or I should talk to the youth agency. Because we don't gather in a space where we enhance the knowledge that we have as part of our armor. And knowledge is armor. Knowledge is part of what you use to fight to change your condition. Information is a vital resource. Your cell phone is a tool of empowerment. It's not just for twittering. It's for empowerment, it's for knowledge, it's for you to use to the good. I'm looking forward to seeing the young person who will innovate the interruption to offensive information communicated through social media. To be interesting to see who will develop that interruption. But developed it must be. It should not be possible to use social media to show how you are murdering an older person. must be some form of interruption and connection with the civil service, the police service, to ensure that such a person is arrested. But who's thinking about that kind of ethical disruption of technology? Very few of us. Yet it is increasingly necessary because the filters in society are becoming so reduced that we need to begin to think in different ways about what we must innovate. So this is what we are hoping you will think about, that you will be really different in the way that you imagine innovation. But that's not my speech. It's just my remarks. Now, I became excited about the potential that lies in youth and innovation when I met a certain professor in India who is a disruptor in villages. His name is, and it's quite unfortunate, is Professor Anil Gupta. No relation to the current Guptas. And I can tell you many Guptas in India are worried about what's happening to the Gupta surname. But Professor Gupta has been engaged in a number of initiatives that seek to promote the concept he has coined of grassroots innovation. And the primary vehicle for this form of innovation is young people in villages and small towns. And when he explained what they were doing, and the millions of young people they've touched in India, I began to ask myself, why are we not doing the same in South Africa? And so I came back, and we had a discussion with my department. And I said, we've got to find a way of touching young people, of reaching young people, of including young people in innovation. Because where they sit, they must be thinking about how do we change our situation? And that young person who's having that thought, that is the young person we must be interested in. So this is how a meeting such as this has come about. So it's not for you to have enjoyment. We want your creative mind. We want you to start thinking about what you might do to make a difference using science, technology, and innovation. So, let me begin then my formal speech, which I worked very hard on, and say that I congratulate officials in the Department of Science and Technology, as well as our South African agency for the advancement of science and technology, and all our science councils for creating space for an Indaba such as this one. The next time we meet, which I'm sure is going to happen again, I will have each of the agencies stand before you, and they must tell you what they are doing to advance youth development in South Africa. So they are warned today. Now, when one looks at the recently published statistics on unemployment in South Africa, particularly youth unemployment, these point to the need for South Africa to devote focused attention to creating opportunities for young people to be innovative in response to our socioeconomic challenges. It's clear from what we're seeing, all the statistics, all the report, that business as usual won't work. So we need to be looking at how do we develop this innovative potential to respond to our myriad challenges. The decline in economic growth in our country and reduced investment in manufacturing and decline in industrial sectors also serve as an urgent call to action. So remember, what we are talking about here is a range of sectors in which we should consider opportunity. We're not talking about, as we have done in some parts of the country, the development of essential oils using the marula seed. Nor are we talking about essential oils through growing rose geranium. We're talking about looking at a range of sectors. And I mention in particular manufacturing and industrial sectors as important areas of focus for us. Do you know that we don't as yet have companies in South Africa that you can give a 7-day order to produce 1 million t-shirts? So that's what I mean when I talk about industrial opportunity. Just take off your caps, those who are wearing them, and see where your cap is made. Very few of you will be wearing a cap made in South Africa. Those of you who are wearing t-shirts, just lift up the label. If it's not India, it's China. If it's not India or China, it's South Korea. Because we have capacity that is far too small. So during elections in South Africa, companies outside South Africa benefit from producing party monogrammed material because we do not have manufacturing capability of that immensity. It's a major opportunity that young people should be looking at. Even you're not wearing Mzansi sneakers. You're wearing sneakers from elsewhere. So all of these are areas we need to look at. So the future of our country, in my view, and the African continent depends on increased support for and development of talented scientists and entrepreneurs who can take up the opportunity to create new technologies and innovative solutions for our pressing problems, or use existing technologies to respond in new ways to our challenges. This is what we are looking for. With the unprecedented growth in many tech sectors, in particular mobile and information and communication technology, there's never been a better time in history for young South Africans to develop solutions that can address this plethora of opportunities. Of course, as we speak today, we also need to be quite honest and realistic about what we're talking about. Not everybody can be a grassroots innovator. So if you think you will sit in the village, you're not going to go to school, you'll dream up some innovation which will make you a billionaire, you're actually not quite realistic in your assessment of the opportunities. What we want as first prize is, yes, to develop the opportunities, to hone some of the ideas that you have. But the key thrust that we are looking for is for you to proceed to become exceptionally skilled researchers and innovators, trained at the highest level to produce global products that will rank us among the top in the world. So as we talk about grassroots innovation, we are not talking down achieving a PhD. Let me make that exceptionally clear. Grassroots innovation does not mean you neglect the need we have for knowledge workers in South Africa and Africa. So let me be clear on that. If anybody is telling you, you can continue, don't study, don't do maths and science, we'll get TIA to fund you, we're playing. We're not being serious. We need more and more masters and PhDs. We need more and more young researchers, because you are best before you are 30 for us. That's what we are looking for. So one of the arguments I shall put before you is that one of the things we need to do is to get many more young people to study and pass mathematics and science subjects. That's what we have to do in South Africa and on the African continent broadly. We cannot afford the low levels of performance in mathematics and science. And it is possible that you as young people interested in science, technology, and innovation may have within you the potential to help us to lift the numbers we have at the moment. So there's a business opportunity immediately. I believe there is much to be proud of in South African science and innovation. We have, as a country, through our scientists, made a disproportionate contribution to technological innovation worldwide, considering that we're a relatively small economy in world terms. Our economy is smaller than that of California, but our contribution to innovation has been quite marked. We boast a long list of impressive inventions, from early tools for collecting, cutting up, and storing food, to traditional medicines, to developing horse-drawn vehicles, developing medical apparatus, to developing even an attack helicopter that is innovative, developing vuvuzela, and the development of an articulated dump truck. South African developments. We are particularly renowned for breakthroughs in the medical field, which includes the heart transplant procedure, first done here 50 years ago, the development of the computer axial tomography machine, or CAT scan, as it's popularly known, which led to breakthroughs in X-ray scanning. And most recently, and maybe, David, this is where the STI comes in, a penis transplant, which has since been copied in the United States of America, copying our scientists who successfully carried out this transplant in South Africa. We are also now renowned for creating pioneering technology companies such as PayPal, Tesla Motors, SpaceX, which are developed in the United States by a South African, Elon Musk, Ubuntu Linux by Mark Shuttleworth, YouTube, Instagram, and Tumbur by Roloff Botha. But we are also renowned for less fancy, maybe the better term is frugal, innovation and entrepreneurship in clean energy, food security, and water resources. We have some of the best conditions for solar energy in the world, and sufficient wind energy potential to respond to our energy needs. So as you build that new industrial plant to produce 1 million caps and t-shirts, base it on solar or wind energy. Use renewables. Our scientists are doing good work in the area of food security. For example, we have Agri-Protein Technologies, a technology startup company which successfully developed and piloted a nutrient recycling technology that converts organic waste to animal feed protein. South African company. Our country is a water-scarce country, as you well know. You know what a challenge the lack of water can be. Ludwig Marishani knew what it was like when he was growing up in a township in Limpopo. And so he dreamed up a type of gel that people can use to clean themselves without having to use water. He was a pupil at school when he developed it into an award-winning product. He responded to the challenge in his community of how to save water in a water-scarce country. Our department, the Department of Science and Technology, offers programs that create awareness of the value of science and technology and the critical role science and technology play in ensuring national prosperity and sustainable development. We have, in an attempt to act on what our former program director David Maimela referred to create public awareness. In an attempt to do this, we have established 34 new science centers in the past 10 years in different parts of the country. This growth in science centers is partly driven by community engagement initiatives through the higher education sector and corporate social responsibility support from the private sector. In the technology sector, we have created a technology top 100 company internship program. Internships are, we believe, really important for young people. Youth employment is critical in building a stable society and in promoting and supporting national economic growth. And we've used as government internships as part of our country's efforts to expand the science and engineering workforce with these scarce skills that our country and the continent so desperately need. Do you know that there are more engineers of Nigerian origin in America than there are in Nigeria? This is how bad our scarce skills needs are. Internships help us to give innovators and entrepreneurs the incentive to build startups of their own. We believe startups are the heartbeat of a developing economy. We are inspired by the success of new entrepreneurs and innovators who've taken advantage of the booming tourism industry, for example, the booming mobile industry, the growing market in renewable energy, and the evolving market in the cultural and creative industries. Our local innovators and entrepreneurs are the ones who will ultimately create the millions of jobs that we need to grow an inclusive economy. Anyone who tells you that the government will create all the jobs that we need in our country, they are telling you a big, fat, dishonest lie. It will be innovators and entrepreneurs and their multiplication who will create the jobs that we need. And of course, as we talk about jobs in the context of the fourth industrial revolution, we know we're talking about something that is increasingly disappearing, right? So we also have to reimagine what we mean by jobs in the context of an increasingly technological world. When we have artificial intelligence available at our fingertips, what will we be doing? And who will create those opportunities? So we even need to begin to think beyond the here and now. So, in our view, innovation and entrepreneurship doesn't only take place at a national level. We believe we need to tap into innovation in cities, in towns, and in villages. At the national level, we've begun to encourage local and regional innovation systems. We're trying to encourage the development of a system that connects local government, big business, startup entrepreneurs, venture capital, research organizations, and grassroots innovators. To achieve full success through innovation, we need this interconnected ecosystem that works neatly and smoothly together. So it's not just the case of where you are located and a TIA in Pretoria. It's who will take up once TIA has done its bit. It's how does that potential taker-upper become aware of the opportunity you've created and be ready to then support you at the next level of the commercial development of what you have developed. So we're working very hard to ensure this seamless integration. But we know very well from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor that our early stage entrepreneurship is very low in comparison with other similar countries in the world. So we've decided to have a stronger focus as DST on what I spoke of at the beginning, on grassroots innovation. And we are developing a grassroots innovation initiative as the sector. We hope we will tackle 4 main issues as we implement this initiative. The first would be to address the underdeveloped provincial systems of innovation that are inadequately integrated with the national system of innovation. Secondly, we intend to address the lack of provincial innovation institutions, such as innovation incubators and science parks supported at the provincial level by provincial governments, assisted in creating them by ourselves from the national level. So we want our country to become a buzzing innovation hub with very visible innovation incubators throughout South Africa, so that we don't have to call you here to the CSIR. You will know exactly where to go because we'll have visible spaces that will be the incubators. Thirdly, we want to address poor communication and collaboration between national and local levels of government. And fourthly, we want to do much more to build connection and cooperation between what is termed the formal economy and informal economies. In fact, the potential for conversion of a range of business activities into thousands of new startups lies in what you call the informal economy. I was relating to my colleagues a few days ago my experience of having to do pamphleteering at 5 a.m. On many mornings during election campaigns, and being extremely hungry at 5 a.m. because you don't have time to have any breakfast at home. And I came across Mam Kize in Mamelodi at the taxi rank with the most beautiful magwinya. So, after enjoying them that day at around 6 a.m., I asked her, where can I buy these in Hatfield? And she does not have an outlet in Hatfield or Menlyn or Brooklyn, but she makes the most delicious fat cakes. So these are opportunities we need to harness. We should stop leaving our people with the idea that their only place of business is a taxi rank. We need to grow these businesses into real small business and medium-sized business opportunities. This is how these oligopolies began. So there's real opportunity there, and it's part of what we're looking at as we develop this grassroots innovation initiatives. Interventions like the Innovation Hub in Tshwane or the Cape Information Technology Initiative in Cape Town are, we think, different ways of approaching the challenge of building linked national and provincial systems. More recently, we've begun to work on building a network of science parks and special economic zones in cooperation with China. A key requirement for us has been that these developments must tackle the spatial legacy left by apartheid planning in a rational and sustainable way. So we are thinking, as we develop these science parks, which will become integrated economic zones, that we must ensure they are located where the people most in need of development reside, rather than in the usual spaces where we locate initiatives, distant from those who most need the development opportunity. So we're thinking in a new way about where we locate our resources as we develop these ideas. We intend as government, and particularly as this department, to work with other departments to provide an enabling environment for supporting innovators who are intent on establishing small and medium-sized enterprises. We also, of course, will draw in our business and foreign donor partners to assist us in creating sufficient financial and technical support to motivate social entrepreneurs and non-governmental organizations to expand and extend their social innovation activities. We will work with these partners in order to ensure development and efficiency of delivery and thus to enhance social impact. So throughout, we'll be looking at what kind of impact are we having. That will be the way we measure ourselves. It mustn't be how much policy we have, it mustn't be how many regulations have we developed, it mustn't be how many funding instruments we have, it must be what number of businesses are we creating, what number of innovators are we helping to commercialize. That will be the form of impact that we look at. And of course, I will look at how many young women are we supporting to become the business leaders of tomorrow, because that's very important for our country. We have many, many financial incentive schemes as the government of South Africa. For example, in 2015, the National Youth Development Agency, along with the Industrial Development Corporation and the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, launched a 2.7 billion rand youth fund, which is aimed at fostering entrepreneurship among South Africa's youth, which is the age range 18 to 35. I don't know how many of you in this room have been touched by that 2.7 billion rand, but I would imagine very few. So we have grand schemes, but low impact. We now need to have grand schemes and high impact. So in areas where we can't directly reach young entrepreneurs, we will build a presence through working with our partners to develop microfinance institutions or use the network of sister agencies, such as the Small Enterprise Development Agency, to provide non-financial support to young people. Although I heard our young speaker from the Eastern Cape saying this writing of business plans is a real problem. But we need to know that you've thought it through. So that is the requirement, but we must provide mentorship and support and not put impossible demands on young people. My daughter is an entrepreneur, and I've observed how hard it is. It's not easy, all right? And we don't make it easy. Institutions don't make it easy. I've met young entrepreneurs at the Innovation Hub, and again, they don't have it easy either. So we've got to look at what's the actual problem. And that means, apart from meeting in this way, we must also use our science agencies to carry out research to understand what's the actual problem and what's the actual need. We should stop brainstorming solutions, right? We need to use evidence-based approaches to develop programs. We tend to brainstorm a bit too much. And I think we need knowledge and data in order to develop appropriate solutions. And it might be that, in fact, there should be a youth fund that the youth oversee. We train them in economic management and financial management, in accounting, and they be the ones that oversee this fund. Because maybe young people might be better managers of some of these resources. We could start with a small portion and grow it based on impact. But I think that would be a brilliant intervention, that we will be there to support you with all that you need for commercialization, but you will be the ones who take some of the financial decisions. And we test you and see what your mettle is like. And those who prove successful, we grow them. I think it's something we need to consider, and when we come back next year, I'll tell you where we are with that idea. So, we've begun then, through our experience and engagement with young people in a range of areas, we've begun to invest in this development I've mentioned of regional innovation fora. We've established the first pilot forum on innovation in the Eastern Cape, and we've just launched a second one here in the province of Gauteng. We think you, young people in South Africa, have an opportunity to both take new knowledge and existing knowledge and apply these not only in small-scale projects, but in big technology projects that will change the shape of the African continent. I know that if we were holding an Indaba like this in Kenya, we'd have doubled the numbers of young people we have here today. So our work remains a large amount of work that we need to undertake. But I really believe that among you, the young people of our country, we have sufficient talent and potential to realize really, really big ambitions. But that to do that, we cannot dream those ambitions. We need to work hard at them. We will get no success or reward without hard work. So while I promote STIs, Mr. Maimela, our young people must avoid STIs in order to be successful. They must also avoid drugs and alcohol and really concentrate on working hard to do well. You have immense intellectual potential. You have immense opportunity. Opportunity many of us never enjoyed. When I asked one scientist once, why don't I get the sense of this drive when I'm with some of our young people? He said, maybe the milieu is too comfortable. The appetite is absent. The hunger is not there. So what I want to see on your faces is hunger. I want to see the intention to drive change. I'm convinced that you have immense potential. I'm convinced that technology and innovation offer you great opportunity. And as I said, I would like to see us beginning to change those numbers in terms of success in mathematics and science. And if we could do it through better use of mobile technology, that would be brilliant. There are ways in which we can reach young people who are in grades 10, 11, and 12 and help them to be successful in maths and science. And sometimes it's not that they don't understand the theorems or the basic concepts, it's that they're not being helped to become confident young people. They're not being helped to focus on positive areas of work. And these are things you might want to do. We are puzzled, for example, at the fact that despite all the information available to young people today, we are still seeing increases in infections of HIV among the youth category, of particularly women in our society. We need to be asking, what is it in our messaging that is failing to alert young people to this danger, that is not succeeding in helping them to guard their health and body more jealously? So it is for you not to write up a list of what the problems are, but for you to say, we know what the issues are, and through technology and innovation, we can begin to provide solutions. We can have young women alert us to danger when they're physically harmed. We can help young men to reduce their anger through particular programs. We can agree that we treat each other with respect and dignity, and we will develop means of doing so. We can alter our society, is what we hope you will get to as you work as young people in South Africa. In conclusion, I want to just say that I have noted the challenges that have been indicated by the panel and the areas that we need to attend to. I think we need to look in particular at how our institutions provide support for young people through all the technology readiness stages until commercialization. And also help young people to reorder their innovative idea if the evaluation is that that particular idea or product may not lead to success. We also need to look at how we support young people with establishing firms, establishing a small company, growing the small to a medium-sized. We need to include young people much more creatively in some of our initiatives, such as the Black Industrialist Program. Noting the companies that have thus far been beneficiaries of that program, my sense is it's more your older group of young Black business people rather than the youth component of our society. So we need to look at why young people might not be applying or why they're missing getting the awards. So there are a range of areas that I have extracted from what you have said, which I think give us some ideas of areas that we should focus upon. We certainly are ready to partner with the South African Youth Chamber of Commerce and discuss how we might work together or how we can help you work with the venture capital sector in our country. Our big challenge is we don't have companies that have a risk appetite in South Africa. Our financiers tend to want to invest in a certain success rather than taking a risk on an idea that might not immediately grab the imaginative mind. So we need to create a risk-taking fund that is able to provide that early stage of support. So we've noted what you've been saying, and we certainly will look at all these ideas. I'm most excited about the idea that entrepreneurship should be part of the education programs that we participate in. Because we don't get education on entrepreneurship sufficiently. Because some of us are from the left, you know, and entrepreneurship has not always been a welcome concept in our theoretical thinking. But I think we've realized that we might be a bit off beam, and that even the left needs to eat. Even the left needs growth. So I think it's an aspect that we need to look at. I think the development of the set-asides by government is a very important intervention, and it's one that we all should be focusing upon studiously. The list of set-asides is going to be expanded significantly through the next listing by the Department of Trade and Industry, working with Treasury. There have been improvements to the preferential procurement regulations, and now there's a strong requirement for local production, much stronger than ever before. So the opportunities are immense. Study them and find out how you use them. Read the regulations, understand them, and where you feel they're not responding to what you need to do, call on your MPs or your leaders to speak to your MPs so that a change is made. Because at least we're a country where we still have a lot of public engagement. So we don't need necessarily to argue only from the street. We can also argue in the boardroom and call on our members of parliament to ensure that a difference is made, which will make a great change to our lives. I'm glad to confirm my department pays within 30 days. We do. If we don't pay, you gave us the wrong invoice. And that's often a problem. We also have to make sure we understand the regulatory framework, things like we must have a tax clearance, etc., all of those things. So being in business is not only about product, it's about all the administrative and other irritating bureaucratic things that go along with that. And they're a protection for you as much as a protection for the consumer. So don't neglect to understand the regulatory context in which your wonderful idea will have to operate. I believe firmly that Africa must do more to invest in research, development, and innovation. And we should be encouraging all the leaders of our countries to take science, technology, and innovation more seriously. I annoyed some, I think, government leaders when I've made the statement that if I don't hear a president mention science, I don't take them seriously as a president. So we must encourage that focus, because there's no continent in the world that has been able to advance without investment in research, development, and innovation. None. So we must encourage Africa. Our governments must invest in science and technology. They must invest in higher education. We must have research-intensive universities. We must have increased numbers of knowledge workers. It cannot be correct that we have 1.5 PhDs per 100,000 of population in Africa and 105 in other parts of the world. It's just unacceptable. And we want to compete. That cannot be right. So I say to you, as you build your small businesses, do my favorite thing. Do your BSc. Do your BSc honors. do your MSc honors, do your PhD. Then Africa will be different. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think you've challenged us a great deal. I just want to get the temperature from the House, because I think you have addressed a lot of issues and you have begun to respond to some of the challenges that have been raised from the floor. And unless there's a burning issue from the floor, I will allow a few minutes of engagement with the minister. Can I just get an indication of hands? Because we are running out of time. So I see a few hands. I'm going to ask the minister to indulge us so that we take just one round. And please remember, you have less than a minute each. Please do not repeat the speech. Just ask your question or make your comment, and please be solutions-oriented. Once again, in acknowledgement of the presence of the Deputy Minister, may we please ask her to join the Minister in front, if that is not a hassle. Okay, thank you very much. But if there are questions directed to the Director General, he's available. May I note those hands? I'm going to start on the left. I see two hands there, the gentleman on the aisle and the lady in orange. And I see a hand here, third one, fourth hand in blue, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's 10 minutes. Please, may we start? You have less than a minute to make a point.
Thank you. My name is Njio Ekolo, graduate student of psychology with UNISA, and also a consultant with a startup, Afrix Consulting. My question is basically coming from my background, which is the social sciences, and I'm happy it was mentioned in the previous presentations. Now, if we look at our society functions basically on the way the system is constructed. And like the Honorable Minister made it clear, we need to do change and look for solutions rather than listing problems. So I just have 3 things that I want to mention, which has to do with change, how to change things, which is simple that we do every day, but how we change behavior. It has 3 things, which some people are trying to discourage, saying motivation. Motivation is one. The second thing is ability, and the next thing is the trigger. So we've been doing a lot of motivation, and now we have to build that capacity and the ability. But yet, we still talk of the scientific part itself, but the human capital, how we develop that culture of entrepreneurship, which of course we can learn that in school, but if you look at research, they've just studied what happens in the society and put in books, document people to do them, which therefore means we can translate that into our everyday lives that will make change. One solution to that is making documentaries. The mind media effect. If we see how people do protest, it is easier to learn those things. Why is it difficult to learn math and science?
Okay, point made. Point made. I'm not cutting you. I'm just reminding you that your time is up.
Thank you very much for the
Second one,
opportunity.
please.
Hello. My name is Khotatso Ngako, a software developer. And my question is simple. Will data fall? So to elaborate, things are changing. Everything is on the internet. Even education is on the internet. They have mass online courses. People do not need to go to school to study for a PhD, but they need to go to school to get the certification for the PhD. And the knowledge is the important thing. So are there initiatives being put in place to make sure that data is affordable for everyone in the households? Because even in townships, people who can afford an internet connection cannot get it because the infrastructure is not there. And mobile carriers that do offer internet or LTE do not offer uncapped internet. They end at like 20 gigabytes. And if someone is on the internet making an internet business, that's not enough for them to function.
Thank you. Third hand.
Hello? Okay, sorry. Hi everyone, I'd like to greet the Honorable Minister and the Deputy Minister and everyone in attendance. I'm actually an aeronautical engineer from Wits University. I also have the startup that makes the affordable robotics that Bridget spoke about earlier on. So we won the Social Innovation Award from SAB. With the minister, I remember meeting her like 4 years ago at Wits University, and we had a little debate during the Q&A regarding, she said, as a BSc, because I was studying, as a BSc graduate, go on to do your master's and your PhD, and she's saying the same stuff again. And I remember saying that I think the problem is there's a difference between fixed mindset and growth mindset, where we have a lot of people coming in studying all of these things, but a lot of my peers are in big companies doing amazing things, yet they're not giving back to the people and the communities where they come from. So what I had said to the minister at that point, and I still want to say again, is I think even here, when we're talking about STI, we should actually be talking about teaching our people a growth mindset. Teach them that it's not about where you come from, it's not about living in a box. Everyone should already start thinking of something bigger than them. If you think of the people that changed the world, Silicon Valley or anything like that, they didn't have PhDs, they actually dropped out of university. And that's because they started early. That's why my affordable robotics, for example, starts at grade 4. So if you think of the difference between me and Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, it's because they started at the age of 11 already coding and programming. By the time they got to university, they already knew that stuff. So they didn't need to sit here and go through a whole PhD to do amazing things in the world. So maybe we should also think differently. Don't be stuck in the traditional way of the education system working. The world is changing.
Thank you. Next hand. Hello?
Yes.
Where was the other hand?
It was here. I'm here.
No. I don't want new hands, please.
The blue one.
I don't want new hands. The blue guy.
Yes.
We're out of time, please.
Yes.
1 second, straight to the point.
Okay. My brother here stole a bit of my
Thanks to that.
my
Do
question.
you have something new to say?
I just wanted to highlight almost the same thing, but I also need Minister to please help us work together with the NYDA here, because, by the way, I'm an innovator. I've been innovating some few things still when I was in high school, and they are there now in the market. I didn't have any PhD by then. Now, I tried to even open my own practice, and the NYDA gave, allocated someone who doesn't understand what I'm doing, a farmer.
Okay.
And
NYDA is here.
Yeah.
You will engage with NYDA going forward.
Okay.
Throughout the day. Next hand.
What was this side?
Yes.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Ronald Siguru. I'm a mining engineer by profession and an entrepreneur on the side hustle. Right. What I'd like to actually point out is more of a solution to what we've been discussing here. I would like to propose a new approach. Well, it's not new, it's a rather different approach which would have us have policies in place so as to protect the economic sphere in which the youth participates, and will allow and nurture this development of STIs, given that, there are major companies and global companies who dominate and monopolize the industries. Globalization has had this effect. So in effect, we're suffocating all of the new innovations and just basically leaving them out to be exploited, if not anything, once we partner with private industries. That chance is there. So protection will be needed from what the future leaders here will be brainstorming.
Okay, thank you. Last person, I think they were here. I'm really not taking any other hands now. Please, we are out of time. Say.
make the network to connect each and every one in this room to one another and make sure that beyond this room, we continue this conversation and we take the action that is needed. I think we will have failed, but at least we will not have made any impact that we're supposed to.
Okay, thanks. I'll allow the Honorable Minister to come and make remarks in terms of what has been raised here. After the Minister has spoken, I will make a few announcements about the proceedings going forward. Thank you, Minister.
So thank you. Thank you very much for the comments. From Giacomo, I agree. I think we neglect the social sciences and ourselves, our personality, and as you said, honing our ability and triggering that potential to our peril. So it's an aspect that I believe we need to attend to quite assiduously. So absolutely, I think we need to be focused much more on what form of interventions, and that's the research that you should do, what form of interventions would inculcate the kinds of characteristics we're talking about here, and how do we infuse them in what we learn? Is our curriculum doing enough? When we talk about values, why are they missing? Why does respect for human dignity remain a high ideal and not a practiced phenomenon in our home, in our setting, in our community? So absolutely in agreement with you about the need for a stronger focus on those areas of knowledge that we do tend to neglect. But I must confess that part of my purpose in life is to talk up science and technology, because we've neglected them on the African continent. And we do have far too many social scientists and humanities and inadequate numbers of technical science and other skills. This is a fact. It's something we can't pretend at, and it's something we have to address. So when we talk about science and mathematics, it's not to the diminution of the humanities or the social sciences, but it's to address a real gap that our continent and our country in particular needs to pay attention to. Much as we hate Verwoerd, he wasn't stupid in the damage he imagined by denying us access to maths and science. And so it is something we cannot neglect. Yeah? But I absolutely agree, and I take note and caution from what you have said. Gotazzo, yes, we hope data costs will fall, but you must argue for it much more strongly in the streets, on the media. You must support the companies where costs are falling and neglect the companies, because economic muscle is power. You need to use it to send a message. Which companies are taking you seriously and which are not? What do you do to make all of them take you seriously? The Ministry of Telecommunications hopefully will be indicating the availability of spectrum and plans with respect to broadband very soon. We've seen the e-commerce strategy published in the last few weeks. We should be paying attention to all these things and making our views known with respect to them. But data costs must fall. We also want you to innovate about how do we penetrate less served communities. What do we do? Is wireless mesh something we should look at much more? What form of intervention will assist us to provide services to the least served in our country? And those solutions would come from yourselves, but absolutely we need to ensure that governments creates the regulatory and other support mechanisms to ensure that data costs fall and fall and fall. But a lot of our mobile technology companies are making a lot of money from us and charging us hugely expensive rates. We need to start quarreling with that. You raised an important issue about giving back. I think it's something we should look at. You know, many developed societies are far more generous than we tend to be. I don't know how many of us donate to a foundation or an NGO, or, you know, we just don't like giving back. Because we talk about, you know, black wealth. Black wealth problem is within our family. You know, it's my sister asking me for money for her kids, and so on and so forth. But what do we do, as they do in the United States, to ensure you give $1 a month to a student fund? Or you create a student fund in your mom's name. Even if you say, I'm gonna start it when I've raised 5,000 Rand, you'll have made a significant contribution. And foundations in other parts of the world do not start as millionaire funds. They start in a very small way, but they build up. We need to be doing that much more as ourselves, the new empowered elite. Absolutely, I remember you very well from that debate at WITS. I agree, don't be stuck in traditional systems of working, but we need the knowledge workers. And it's when you get to the level of PhD that you are then working independently and starting to hone your innovative ideas, which may have not a unique effect, but an effect on the generality of the global community. That's the kind of research attention we're talking about. So it's not everyone who'll do it, but we can't have the numbers we have now. Africa cannot. We have to get to a point where we're not relying on others. We are buying knowledge from elsewhere. We are not producing our own knowledge because we're not training knowledge workers. This is my argument. It's not against doing as you have done, but it is that in order to get to a point where you massify, you need those knowledge workers in institutions dedicated to knowledge production. Without that, Africa will not become global. Yeah? So that's my argument. Not in any way contradicting what you've said, but it can't be the one at the exclusion of the other. Then we'll be making a fundamental error. So that would be what I'm saying. And be careful about attempting to take examples and generalize them to the entire world. Bill Gates spent 10,000 hours on a very old computer, but we can't say everybody would do that, you know? So I think this is what I'm saying, without in any way detracting from the very important point you have made. So I hope you'll raise a new point next time we meet, because I agree with you very, very much. On the need to work with NYDA, as has been said, find out where they are, approach them, start engaging. I'm sure NYDA has a lot of programs. It has altered. Its focus, I think, has become really exciting, and I think young people must now connect with NYDA. Ronald, we have created institutions that provide support. At the moment, it's really been intellectual property protection of outcomes of research from publicly financed research endeavors. Maybe we need to look at what kind of instrument should be created to provide the kinds of protection in the grassroots sector that we're talking about. I know this Professor Gupta has done that in India, so again, we might want to look at them. When I mention Gupta, I always get scared because people will think, you know, but you understand what I'm talking about. But I think you're absolutely right. The reason we created this governance component in our department, which is called NIPMO, which is National Intellectual Property Management Organization, was to provide the ability to government to provide publicly financed researchers with support in patenting, protection of intellectual property, development of product to market without the dangers you refer to, because there's amazing theft of ideas. I mean, you know that there's a lot of industrial crime, for example. Ideas are stolen in major corporates, so it would happen with the grassroots innovator as well. We've seen it with indigenous knowledge, where something that the SAN community has used to reduce hunger pangs is stolen by a foreign company and developed outside Africa, and then becomes an American or something else product, and we've missed the opportunity. So our IP ability has to be much stronger. I agree with you. On CSIR, yes, we definitely need connections. Networks are absolutely important. And as I was saying, if you were to look at the sum total of the nature of interaction we have on Twitter, to what degree is it intellectually oriented? To what degree is it growth forming? How many ideas on Twitter that you share with your friends are positive ideas? Generally, we're joking about each other, or, you know, insulting each other, or some such thing, or sharing the bad news, etc., instead of actually saying, hey, Mchana, have you seen that film on African-American women who helped to put a man on the moon? Have you watched the tribulations that women can go through in a male-dominated science environment where they are extremely bright? Did you see how the integrity of their intellectual property was interfered with? Brilliant film. We should all watch it. It's on in the cinemas at the moment. Very, very exciting. There's amazing talent, but talent is kept down, not always allowed to bloom, and we don't always see this. Why? Because we're busy with this. Twitter, Facebook. Someone was showing me some posters yesterday posted on Facebook. Yo! And you look at that stuff, you think, hey, abantwana bethu. Wenze njani? So I think the connections, if there are connections about, does CSIR have a biorefinery facility? Can I bring my products as a small business to the CSIR? Because we have those facilities here. One of the speakers was saying, where do I get my prototypes tested? We have some ability here at the CSIR. We should be able to use it. And our colleague here, Basanda, should be our source of information. We are able to support small and medium-sized businesses to access nano facilities right here at the CSIR. So the network would help us to use the ability our country has effectively to support us to become great. Thank you very much, and it's been wonderful. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Indaba.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We've come to the end of our first session. Now, what's going to happen is that we're going to have a 10-minute tea break, and after the tea break, we go straight to our breakaway rooms. The first segment is the first 3 thematic areas before lunch, as they appear on your program, sub-theme 1, 2, and 3. So you divide yourselves according to those, and we'll have lunch, and after lunch, we go back to our thematic areas 4, 5, and 6. We may have to manage time because we allocated 2 hours per thematic session, but we may have to do an hour to get to 1 o'clock for lunchtime. Please, a reminder to the facilitators, we have 1 hour. Just make sure that you deal with all the issues within an hour. Thank you very much for your cooperation. You've been very wonderful. that way, I'm the kid who needed that when I was living in the normal country. That like, I needed exposure to that. Like I was talking about globalization in South Africa. Sure, she can say that we mustn't take it as generalized, but it's actually the fact that their 10,000 houses was put in Canada. With you, you only supposed to start putting your 10,000 houses in university because you sit there and you get out of touch with technology. Guys, I have an exhibition stand at City Office. It's a table. Yeah, you can. Oh, you want to? Yeah. That is just, yeah, then you can go in there. Yeah, no, you can just hold it. Okay. You know what, just